the inherent risk of failure or injury or even death is much greater than what I do. But we take on that risk every day, right?
Hmm.
If I couldn't step in that airplane at 14, not knowing anything, if I didn't take that first step, I wouldn't be here where I am.
Welcome to the Yeah But podcast, where leaders tune in when they want to be unstuck and unstoppable. I'm Marc Wolf, president of Marc A. Wolf Enterprises and author of Yeah But, Cut Through the Noise to Live, Learn, and Lead Better. In each episode, I interview relatable people who share their yeah buts along with their doubts, fears, and alibis, and then share how to overcome them to unlock true potential. Whether it's personal growth, leadership challenges, or simply living with more intention, the Yeah But podcast is all about turning those excuses into actions. So if you're ready to stop being held back and start moving forward, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello,
Yes.
Jimmy Ward. Thanks for joining us
Hi,
on
Mark.
the Yeah But podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
You know, Jimmy, I want to tell people what you do. You would expect that some people that have your occupation would be interested. His grandfather was a pilot in the United States Air Force and instilled a passion for aviation in his grandchildren and family by teaching him how to fly. His natural talent and unwavering dedication propelled him to new heights, literally. After completing his training and obtaining his license, Jimmy embarked on a career as a commercial pilot. He's a captain, and his expertise extended beyond a single aircraft as he became proficient in flying three different commercial airliners. And what I think is even interesting that's not even on his bio is that Jimmy works and tests planes to make sure they're actually functioning correctly. That's an extended part of his job, is to make sure that all the parts and all the updates and everything else to get them back in service, to put them in the desert when they actually have to go and go offline. And that's just part of your job in addition to
Mhm.
flying back and forth. And you have loved flying for as long as I've known you. There's not a time I don't hang around you where you're not looking up and looking at a plane or wondering about that. So, Jimmy,
That's
tell us a
true.
little bit about this passion for flying and how it ties into you being so structured and organized.
Well, the passion did start a couple generations ago with my grandfather. I was always enamored as a kid listening to him speak about his combat experience as a aircraft commander in a B-24 in the 8th Air Force in World War II, to be able to survive 31 missions in the war as an aircraft commander and see other crew members killed in action, and to be in action because he did all these things that were so noble and courageous. And I want to be like that. And he passed these traits down to my dad. And he's a pilot as well. So he taught me, he was my instructor most of my way through my ratings.
It's a great story. And I've seen pictures of you with your dad. I think one of the yeah buts you mentioned was, yeah, but it's not safe, it's risky. You're an airline pilot. So tell me about this it's not safe thing.
There's an inherent risk in flying an airplane, or some people say an aluminum tin can, 600 miles an hour. So, yes, I think risk can also equal reward if stewarded well. The inherent risk of failure or injury or even death is much greater than what I do. But we take on that risk every day, right?
Hmm.
If I couldn't step in that airplane at 14, not knowing anything, if I didn't take that first step, I wouldn't be here where I am. But so I had to rely on my mentor, my father. So I think a lot of the, yeah, but it's risky needs to be just contained. Like, yes, it is. I'm not going to live in fear of that. I'm going to embrace it and learn how to mitigate that risk and learn how to take certain strategies and use my knowledge and use my discernment, much so that it moves down. Everything has inherent risk. It's just how you deal with it and how you mitigate it and how you treat it. Is it something that you're going to be fearful of and just cave? Or are you going to embrace that and say, yeah, it's risky, but the rewards are great and I'm going to do
Hmm.
this?
Thank you for that, Jimmy. You know, we
Mhm.
talk about in the book about not doing something actually is a risk as well,
That's right.
because there's an obligation to do things. Sometimes you're gifted with some things that not doing it or ignoring it actually could put you in a worse position. And people forget that. They only think of risk as attempting something, and they
That's correct.
forget that not attempting something. So it's interesting that you know that statistically flying is safer than driving a car, but people don't even walk around their car to see if anything's even sticking out of the side of their
That's right.
tire. So Jimmy, so when you look at risk, right, how do you discern, like, just overall, how to move forward with something that, you know, generally people consider risky outside your
Mhm.
profession, just
Mhm.
overall?
Mhm. Yeah. So I think you have to step back and you have to realize what you're looking at, right? And you have to make that decision. Do I cower down and not accept the risk, or do I embrace it and move forward? And you have to make that decision first in your mind of no, this is doable. If it's the risk of me flying from A to B, there are 1,000 threats along the way. Is it weather? Is it maintenance? Is it air traffic control? Is it, well, what is the risk that I have today? It's all about mitigation and wisdom and knowledge and building a team. It's just everyday life or test flying airplanes or operating and leading a surgery team. So there's different levels of risk, but managing it seems to be very similar in how we do that.
That leads to the next question. We have a yeah, but what's the plan? Tell me more about how that can be a yeah, but that sometimes you have to overcome.
Well, we all like to have plans, especially you and I. We're type A's, right? We like to have everything laid out, everything structured, but very rarely in life is it that way, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
often throwing curveballs. That happened to us when I was a young pilot. I had achieved the certifications and licenses and ratings to fly for the airlines. So I did that at 23, which is absolutely the youngest age you can possibly do that. When I was 27, I got the letter from the airline saying, "Thank you so much for your service. We no longer need you." It's now post 9/11, and people aren't flying in airplanes. We don't need pilots flying empty airplanes around. So thank you so much for your service. Have a nice day. So my point of the story is the plan that I had was radically derailed by circumstances outside of my control. It's just life, right? What does it look like when there's no plan? How do you steward that well? Well, I think you just step up. So my plan was to start over. And I had some friends approach me. They're like, "Hey, we're in the insurance industry. Why don't you come to work with us?" I was like, "Oh, okay. I have insurance. That's about all I know about insurance." So it was a 3-year period of learning and growing and developing in a different field, right? That was the new plan. And it wasn't clear at all because there was no plan. I was just doing something in the moment to take care of the family, to do what I had to do, which was a radical pivot from what I've been doing. But when you have the chance to do that and you look back 20 years later, I'm just filled with joy and gratitude for the skills that I learned, the people that I met, the way that I was able to grow in these skill sets.
When you mention this, career changes, a lot of people have difficulty with career changes, especially at a young age. It's not something you just jump into. The barriers to entry are hard, right?
Right.
Expensive. You got to pay
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
training, even if you have your own plane. There's a lot of things to it. You went from desiring at 14 to 23, and you went, and then you have no control when they let you go, or 9/11, or any of that things that
Right.
do that. I know you're back obviously in the airline industry again, so obviously
Hmm.
things
Hmm.
change for the better. But what advice do you give to somebody who's struggling to develop a clear plan or direction, and they really are planners, and they don't
Hmm.
handle lack of
Hmm.
plans really well, and they want everything all scaped out, and they're like, "I'm going to have kids at this age, or I'm going to do this." Not saying that wasn't you, Jimmy, that you might have also had plans, but
Right.
what kind of advice do you give to those people?
I would say hold your plan loosely. Okay. Know what you want to do and work towards that. As we discussed before, develop your team, right? Develop your mentors. Pull from people who are in the same field, in the same situations, learn from them, and move forward with that plan. You know, pray about it, seek the Lord on that, and go for it. But hold those things loosely, right? Our jobs don't define us. Sometimes, oh, Jimmy, he's the pilot. I am, but I'm a family man. I'm all these other things. My job doesn't define me, but yes, we all have to have jobs. So I would say stick to the plan, right? And be flexible to pivot because sometimes when you're working on that plan, the ultimate end game might pivot. You might get a calling to do something else along those lines. So be wise, use your resources as we've discussed, but hold the plan loosely. It's not the end all be all.
Hey there, it's time for a quick break. While we're diving into how to live, learn, and lead better, I wanted to let you in on something I'm really excited about. If you've ever found yourself stuck in the yeah, but cycle, those moments where excuses get in your way of your potential, my new book, Yeah, But Cut Through the Noise to Live, Learn, and Lead Better, is for you. The book is packed with practical strategies, real stories, and actionable advice to help you stop making excuses and start making progress. Whether you're a leader, a learner, or just someone looking to cut through the noise, Yeah But has something for you. And here's the best part. For a limited time, you can grab a chapter for free. Just head over to my website at www.markawolf.com/book to get started. Readers have already said that the perspective and stories guided them to get unstuck and move forward. All right, let's get back to the show and dive into more ways to break through those yeah but moments. Another thing that I think comes up a lot with people, especially men or type A's, or there's certain behavioral traits for people.
Mhm.
And that's why I give people assessments. It's kind of like supports a lot of times what they're already doing. It gives you data behind it. But
Right.
it's like when somebody's so committed, you're like, you have to do training. You have to have so many landings every 90 days. There's certain requirements.
Mhm.
CPAs have to go and get certain new classes. They have to learn. So, there's a lot of professions that require a lot of detail and require a lot of additional information. And also, you can't really schedule. So, when you talked about people when they're trying to plan a career, let's say they want to become a pilot or something else, and they're just like, okay, how do you balance between having a family, having a career, providing for your young family? How do you balance that?
Well, again, it's important to know who you are, right? Who are you? Does your work define you? Does the Lord define you? Does your family define what is your goal in life? And for me personally, it is to be the best child of God that I can be, right? And what does that look like? Well, I'll tell you, it's something that's developed over time. If you keep it your top priority, you will prioritize things and everything else will naturally fall into place. I'm not saying life is going to be perfect and rainbows and lollipops because, as I told you, for me, it was not. And for many people, it's not. The plan is almost never 100% perfect as you lined it out, from beginning to end. So knowing who you are is the first step and what your priorities are, right? And again, along the way, you may have that feeling of, I really think that I'm supposed to be doing something else. And one example for us was in our early 20s, we were part of a group. I'll just say that. And it was a great group of people that we developed fantastic friendships with. It was great. It just felt wonderful, but something was missing, right? We weren't necessarily growing. We were just in a place of comfort, if you will. But when you're being called to grow and develop and do something else, and I think the
Mhm.
worst thing you can do is not embrace that. I mean, sure, there's a period of discerning, and we had a lot of yeah buts. Yeah, but we're comfortable, you know? Yeah, but this feels great. Yeah, but how can this be bad? And it wasn't bad. It was just that you're not growing and developing and maturing and reaching your full potential. That's great for vacation. But for life, we're being called to do more than that. So we don't, when we make the decision for the comfort and the ease, we're limited, right? We're limiting ourselves. And I think that can easily seep into family life, relationships, work, because you're in a mindset of just no worries, it's all good, right?
Mhm.
Let's
Mhm.
not be people like that. Let's be people that want the challenge, that strive for greatness, that want to be everything that we were created to be. And that's always pays off. It's not always easy, but it always pays off.
Yeah, it's a conviction over convenience, right, Jimmy? One of your other yeah buts that you mentioned was what will other people say or think? So tell me about some things that you're like had to overcome that you were concerned that people were going to think, but then you did work through them and you're like, I believe that's not a concern anymore.
Right. So let's go back to the previous example, leaving this group of comfort and
Mhm.
just wonderful friendship, which is always great. But in order to grow, you have to be challenged, right? And you have to be set apart from your comfort zone. And it's going to hurt a little bit. But in the end, it's your life. And you have a decision to make. Every day we have decisions to make.
There's a lot of people out there, Jimmy, that aren't where you are today, right? This didn't happen overnight, right? And
Mhm.
you credit a lot of this to your upbringing and just your family fed into you and spent that. But unfortunately, for a lot of different reasons, that's not the case for a lot of people. They don't know what their career is at 14,
Mhm.
right? And they
Mhm.
don't have a family support system. How do you create that daily habit or practice or what gets you over the hump when you didn't have something that was there to go and be able to reinforce it? What do you do to be able to help make that happen?
For me, I draw on the Lord. When I don't know what to do, I ask Him and I ask for direction. and I'm in a constant relationship with him, right? To be in a relationship, just like our friendship, right? You have to talk and express feelings and express thoughts, but you also have to listen. It's a two-way street. You can't have a relationship without those two things. You have to be a good listener and a good communicator. And yes, we went through some very difficult times where we didn't know, right? Because my plan was derailed. It was just a huge benefit and a blessing that I knew what I wanted to do at 14, but that was gone at 23 or 27. So knowing that that was my passion and that was what I was called to do, is to be a pilot, I just had no doubt in my mind. Everybody has a passion to do something. You may not have discovered it yet, but again, by being in a relationship with people, having deep, meaningful conversations, you're going to find what that passion is. The Lord didn't create us to go through life alone. He created us to be around other people. So surround yourself with people that can build you up in your faith life, in your family, in your work, or whatever situation you find yourself in.
Until you actually get to live it out, it still seems like a mystery, right? So anyone that
Yes,
doesn't yet
yes,
understand what a career could feel like they love, right? So let's just
yes,
expand it even beyond faith, right? It's like if you don't know what it's like and you see other people, you sometimes excuse it out to say, well, that's just them, right? It's because
mm,
of their gender, or it's because of where they grew
mm,
up, or it's because
mm.
of their family. That all may be true. The thing is that not one way is for people to find a career, right? There's not just one way for them to find a spouse and be able to stay married. It's a culmination of a lot of different things.
That's
But
right.
one of the things I talk about a lot is the yeah buts, which is like we can excuse our way just like you could have and been like, well, I guess my career's over. I guess it just was done. And instead you persevere. That's the thing I want to make sure people understand, is that there's a lot of reasons we can give or yeah buts
Mm,
to go and
mm.
say why things don't happen, why they don't happen for you, what could change, why it doesn't change. And maybe if we turn it and we change the perspective, it's going to be more of, well, what happens if it's possible? What happens if I
Mhm.
cared less about what people thought and more about what I think about myself? What happens
Right.
if I go and I don't have a plan, but I have part of a plan? And what
Hmm.
happens if I go until I fail? And then how much further did I get because I at least started it? Right. So
Right.
each
Right.
kind of conversation we have with ourselves is so important for people to understand. It's like, oh, maybe I'm just looking at it upside down. Maybe if I just
Right.
change the way I looked at it.
And you know what? Along this process, there's going to be failures, right?
Hmm.
And those aren't bad, right? They hurt in the moment. My plan failed, but it was for a very good reason, right? Through those 3 years of not having a job, the humility piece was allowed to grow inside of me. And right up to that 2.5 year mark, my prayers were like, Lord, I don't care. You've allowed me to do everything that I wanted to do in flying. If you just want to pull me out, that's fine. Just show me where you want me to be. And once I had that heart change and the realization of that humility come into my life, I think the Lord was like, see, that's exactly what I wanted for you.
Hmm.
And it wasn't literally weeks after that where I was able to get another flying job and move back into the path that He had for me. So having the right perspective, holding your plans loosely, pulling in from advisors and people full of wisdom will take you a long way. The worst thing we could do is just be hermits and not go out in the world.
Well, Jimmy, thank you for taking the time. Was there any questions or any closing comments that you have?
I don't, just very happy for you in this book. I'm excited to see it all come together and can't wait to read it.
I appreciate it. And in the show
Yeah.
notes, we'll have ways for people to reach out to you if they have other questions, because that's the thing about these conversations, Jimmy. You never know how people are going to be like, I can't believe he's telling my story, right? Like, this is
Right.
what I've lived through, even though I'm not a pilot. And that's why I wrote, yeah, but it's like, why do I have a right to write this?
Hmm.
I don't, but I've been called to, because even though I'm not an author, I look at this and say I have a story. And then sometimes there's other people that's exactly what they needed to hear, because it's bigger than you or I, Jimmy, right? It's who
100%.
we are. It's because of who we
Yes.
were made and why we were
Hmm.
sent.
Hmm.
So
That's why
thank you.
there's millions and billions of us here, right? To glean from, not just a few of us.
That's true. Jimmy,
Yeah.
thanks so much for your time, and I appreciate your answers and insight.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for listening to the Yeah But podcast. If today's episode provided valuable perspective on how to overcome the excuses that can hold you back, let us know in the comments. Remember, it's not about the yeah buts. It's about finding ways to live, learn, and lead better every day. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little kick to get past their yeah buts. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And for even more tips, connect with me at marcawolf.com/podcast or on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep challenging those excuses and keep moving forward.